Well, my dear, summer is over, which is a blessed relief for me because I hate summer, but how the children feel about it, I'm not sure. They are due back at Lambrook today, the Wales children, so obviously the Wales family will have returned from their sojourn to Balmoral for the summer. Now, before we go ahead, a comment popped up just a little while ago today from a viewer by the name of Lana S. Boyd. And the name's familiar, so I've read one of your comments before, Lana, possibly, or noticed you. Could be because you're a troublemaker, or could be because you're a devoted basketeer. I can't quite remember at this moment in time, so forgive me. But what I'm saying is that I put no credence behind this comment whatsoever, but if it's true, then I thank you most sincerely, Lana, for sharing the whisper with us, because Lana S. Boyd tells us, and I don't know where she's got this information, if it's from her own vision or from online or somewhere, but I couldn't see it anywhere else being repeated. She says, royal gossip. Dearest River and fellow fruits, I have a juicy tidbit of gossip for you all. There has been much activity over the skies of Sandringham this morning in the form of an RAF escort. This means only one thing, a Major Royal being escorted into or out of the country from the nearby RAF base. Prince William and the King usually use helicopters to get to and from Balmoral, Sandringham and Windsor, so it's not them. The only conclusion to draw is that Harry did not give himself 4 days in England. I'm guessing he's been holed up at Sandringham in an estate cottage while the King was in Balmoral. The RAF were certainly not flying over for jollies at 10 a.m. on the 4th of August. Funny how he gets to sneak in and out with full security when he wants to. Well, I'm offering that to you, my dears, to take as you wish to. I am not at all up to date with Harry's whereabouts. Perhaps he's been sighted elsewhere or back in Montecito. Anywhere there he's getting up to all the little naughtinesses that he gets up to. Could be all over the place, so please don't come for me if this isn't true, but you know, an interesting little tidbit there. Whether or not it's Harry, interesting to wonder who these flights might be connected to on all of this activity over Sandringham, but do furnish us with any information, yay or nay. But before we move on to matters royal, I would like to have a good old grumble. I'll put some timestamps in the description box so that those of you who don't want to hear me ranting and raving can shuffle on ahead. And this time it is about tethered bottle caps, is apparently what they're called. Now, as you might recall, I was eating and drinking a little differently through the beginning of the year. It's only recently that I've started bringing more variety back into my diet. And for the first 7 months of the year, the only liquid that I was consuming was bottled water, both still and sparkling. And I happened to be using the Highland Spring brand. And I noticed when I was using these bottles that when I tried to twist the cap off, all of a sudden you couldn't, and it was remaining attached. But I thought it was a sort of flaw in the design. And, you know, I'd rip it off. But it was really annoying, but I happened to quite enjoy the brand of water, so I stuck with it. And it was only in the past couple of months that I returned to eating or drinking my Huel bottles and a few various other things. And the same thing kept happening, this sort of snag. So I'm sure that some of you will have noticed this, especially if you're in Europe and the Kingdom, over the last few months, but I didn't know what was going on. I was unaware of the changes that had been made to bottle caps. And I googled this. I googled what's going on with bottle caps online, and so it turns out that this is the result of laws that have been designed to boost recycling and cut down on litter. Really? You couldn't make it up, could you? And I should have guessed, shouldn't I? I should have guessed that something wrong like this was going on. And for me, it absolutely symbolises what has been going on with the dumbing down of society over the last few years, the ridiculousnesses that we are all subject to. For example, the ongoing attack on smokers, which we will get into another time. This is down to a law of the European Union. It's a European an EU directive 2019-2020, which came into effect a couple of months ago in July. And this law is not actually binding within the kingdom because, as you know, we left the EU several years ago for Brexit. But when all of these companies began producing tethered caps under EU law, it didn't make sense to them financially or logistically to produce different types of caps for the UK and the EU markets. So we've been saddled with them as well. And this law requires all beverage containers up to 3 litres to have a cap which remains attached after opening. I cannot believe this. It is so incredibly annoying. It scratches your hand when you open the cap. You get a little scratch there, or a scratch to the lips if you attempt to drink. Because some people like to drink out of the bottle, don't they? I do it with my Huel bottles. And what I'd been doing throughout the first few months of the year was actually snipping it away with scissors from the cap and the bottle because I didn't like it there. I wanted a clean break from the cap. Well, apparently, despite these bottles and caps being made of different plastics, the caps are easier to recycle if they arrive still attached to the bottle at the recycling plant. So this is why they're encouraging them to stay attached to the bottle. Some experts say that it's worth the mild convenience, as they put it, but others say that it creates more problems than it solves. Well, I grew up, my dears, being encouraged to recycle and taking it fairly seriously. Well, not that I was serious about it, but I was diligent at doing it, whether at home or in the workplaces, recycling. And of course, we've all noticed the increasing number of bins and demands being placed on us to be discerning as to which scrap of plastic goes in which bin. And it all sort of came to a bit of a head for me in recent years, actually, when I witnessed 2 different things. One was the fact that I witnessed my mother emptying a tea bag into a composting bin that she keeps under her sink in the kitchen. And she would actually scrape out the material in the tea bag and separate it from the tea bag itself and put them in different recycling bins. And this happened to fall on the same week that I also witnessed from my window refuse collectors pouring bins worth of recycled material into the lorries that pick up the general waste with absolute disregard. Just chuck them in there. So everybody's hard work in preparing their recyclable materials was a complete waste of time. And then you begin reading all these stories about how recycling is shipped halfway across the globe anyway. Some of it ends up in the ocean. You don't know where it ends up really, to be honest, but not that much of it seems to be getting recycled. But what I'm saying is that I saw the inanity of it at that moment. I said to my mother, I said to her, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She said, "Well, I've got to recycle." And I said, "I think we're being taken for fools." When you think about the scale of the industrial waste and the impact of countries from continents such as our own and also India, and the vast amounts of industrial waste, and there we are as tools and fools. We've been organised into these people who are frantically carving up all of our recycling to the point of scraping out tea bags into little composting bins. And I just thought, no, it's actually got to stop with me. So I don't recycle anymore. And I don't care who it offends. I don't want to hear about it. You'll be blocked if I notice anybody lecturing to me about it. I don't give a crap. I really don't. I don't do it anymore. And I only produce 1 or 2 black bagfuls of refuse every week or so, and I dump it all out together in the trash, and I save myself the trouble, and I don't feel guilty whatsoever, I'm afraid. If I happen to be in an environment where I notice 1 bin for recycling, 1 for general waste, then of course I will oblige and do what has to be done, but I'm not turning somersaults in order to do it. And I actually think this is totally ridiculous, absolutely appalling, but sadly utterly typical of this clown world that we now find ourselves in. While we're on the subject of clowns, American Riviera Orchard seems to be in a bit of a jam and a bit of a pickle with the US Patent and Trademark Office. What a shame. Trademark denied. As of August 31st. Yes, you heard correctly. What a sticky situation for the jam manufacturers. The Patent Office says that businesses are not allowed to trademark geographic locations, which includes the descriptor of American Riviera for the Santa Barbara's coastline. And I'm worried that she's going to change it to American River Orchard, because it's quite obvious that she's inspired by me with all this Riviera guff. Well, actually, there was a whole roster of problems with the trademark filing. There were various documents that hadn't been signed when they should have been, and she was admonished by the Patent Office for the vague descriptions of her wares, meaning that they could apply to multiple trademark categories. You've got to be forensic and precise with this sort of thing, and she should have learnt it by now, because she's made mistakes before. Simple schoolgirl errors, and her team should know this, if not her, but we all know that she hasn't got much of a team at the moment because she can't hold them down, can she? And apparently she's juggling all the balls herself. Harry's ginger balls as well. But this isn't her first time at the rodeo, and it might have behooved her to get this in their bag, to get this whole matter taken care of before we had the jam release and the big publicity jamboree from months back now, didn't we? With all this ridiculousness where she was sending jam across the planet to all her celebrity chums. Well, of course, that was suspiciously close to the wake of Catherine's very serious announcement, wasn't it? Either Meghan or her colluders decided to put out that launch in the wake of Catherine's nasty turn of events. I wonder if they think that was such a wise move now, especially if they're going to end up having to rebrand. Examples were also given of other businesses using American Riviera, such as a brand called SB Coastal Candles, who have one that goes under that name. They said registration is refused because the applied for mark is primarily geographically descriptive. Commonly used nicknames for geographical locations are generally treated as equivalent to the proper geographic name of the place identified. American Riviera is a common nickname for Santa Barbara, California. Well, Meghan, my dear, we have a part of the kingdom called the English Riviera. It's not exclusive to other continents. You could name your brand after one of the most famous locations in our Riviera, Torquay. How about that, my dear? Torquay by the Duchess of Sussex. What a thought. This could actually be a blessing in disguise for the gal, because nobody thought that the name was a good idea, even her fans, did they? Why couldn't she have called it after her mansion, the Chateau of Riven Rock? Or even just Riven Rock? It's got more of a ring to it than American Riviera Orchard anyway, I'll say that. Or the Bun Hustler? We mustn't jump the gun, because the decision is not final. And actually the decision can be appealed, and Archewell are insisting that this is just routine and expected, and they could in fact just simply issue a disclaimer confirming that no claim is made to the exclusive right to use American Riviera. Legal wranglings actually are not unusual of this kind, so in the end it could come through. No doubt she'll charm them with handwritten letters and curlicues, a handwritten plea daubed in scent and sealed with a kiss. The kiss stained from Catherine's stolen lip gloss, no doubt. Queen Camilla toured the new Dyson Cancer Centre in Bath, where services for 300 patients are centralised under one roof. Her Majesty chatted with patients and staff, bringing good cheer to the environment and shining a spotlight on this worthy facility. She was wearing Fiona Clare and a bag in nude leather by Bottega Veneta, and later on she rolled up for the opening of the new headquarters for Stonegate Farmers, and she was very kissy with the Queen's companion, one of her companions, Lady Sarah there. Lovely Sarah. But this is a cutting-edge facility for packing free-range and organic eggs, and Her Majesty unveiled a plaque to mark the official opening and received a lovely posy in the most beautiful seasonal wildflowers. Good show. The King managed to thrill a young girl who was celebrating her birthday with a royal wave as his fleet of cars passed by as he was returning to Balmoral after the summer show at Dudley Park. A memory to cherish. His Majesty has joined forces with a design duo by the name of Vin and Omi to produce a limited run of 100 headscarves made in silk and inspired by the late Queen's own fondness for headscarves and her love of colour. They're being sold in the Sandringham Estate shop for £85, so roll up and get in there quick, my dears. There were 3 design variations created, and the King eventually chose the final design, and of course, with it being His Majesty, all were made with environmental consciousness at the forefront of the mind. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, my dears, that it was People magazine who gave us the exclusive news that Prince Harry had stayed with Earl Spencer at Althorp. And by the way, I refuse to call it Althorp. I know this is the new way, or according to Earl Spencer, there have always been 2 official pronunciations, and he should know, I understand that. According to the BBC, he says that there have always been 2 official pronunciations. Well, I don't care what the BBC says, and to be quite honest, I don't care what Earl Spencer says, even if it is his own estate. It's Althorp. It's always been Althorp. I actually looked back and found an old news article from 1998 which raked over this particular controversy, where Earl Spencer back then was doubling down on the true pronunciation of Althorp. And as he stated in a note provided to the BBC, that is how all of his ancestors used to pronounce it too. But for some very strange reason, at some point in time, he backed down. And I think that it's a real shame that it is now publicly pushed as Althorp, because there is something in the idiosyncrasies of the spelling of these aristocratic estates that's rather cosy and rather appealing. The play on language, I enjoy it. So it's always going to be Althorp to me, my dears, no matter how he or anybody else pronounces it. But that's where Harry stayed, we are told. And of course it was Diana's death anniversary on the 31st of August, very sad, 27 years since she died, and the Earl shared press clippings of her birth announcement. The Spencers have many qualities to admire. Whatever people think of them and various members of that family, they have many qualities to admire, and that includes Earl Spencer, who is praised for many things, including his sensitivity, his writing, very decent writer, widely enjoyed, and he can be quite flirtatious as well. Very flirtatious, I'd say, rather like his sister, his late sister, very much so. And as has recently come to light, he was badly abused as a boy. So he's been through a lot of trauma in his life, and he grew up with a lot of dysfunction. Dysfunctional relationships were a theme and continued throughout his life, as did drama. A lot of drama tends to follow particular characters, doesn't it? And he is one, and that family is one that drama surrounds. And I say this because it's interesting to note, isn't it, that William, unlike Harry, who seems to be drawn to the same sort of scenario, histrionic scenario, as some members of the Spencer family, William appears to be taking after his father and his late granny, doesn't he? Who have a more sober outlook and avoids any sort of public drama. We know behind the scenes that Charles and William both have more tempestuous sides to their nature. Nothing out of the ordinary, just human characteristics. But William and Charles and the late Elizabeth all go and went out of their way to avoid any public drama. And I'd go so far as to say that even though they're not always successful in dampening it down, they quite simply have a zero tolerance approach to it and a zero tolerance attitude to that sort of festering drama. They will not indulge it. They can't prevent the fires and the flames around them. They can't prevent some of the press mischief and speculation. Of course they can't, but they do not indulge it, they do not encourage it, and they aren't plagued with a million insecurities that make them exacerbate that whole sort of scenario, which I'm very relieved about, because you can argue the toss over which approach is healthier, and there will be fair-minded arguments for both of those approaches, but there is certainly no doubt which approach is more royal. at the end of the day. And this is another reason why we are absolutely blessed that William came first. And our future king continues to get on quietly with duty and service, making a real difference, including with the Earthshot prize. 5 new game changers have joined the Prince of Wales's Earthshot prize family. 3 of them are new prize council members who are inspiring environmental champions. Jose Andres is the founder of World Central Kitchen, who also happens to be a recipient of the Archewell Foundation and is said to be Prince Harry's favourite chef. Well, now he is cooking up a storm with William and not cooking the books for Archewell. So there's him, there's the author and indigenous activist Namonte Nkwimo, and there is the environmental activist Wanjira Maathai. And then 2 official global ambassadors were named, the actress and producer Nomzamo Mbatha and Robert Irwin. All good work, all good work. And there was a sighting of Princess Eugenie, who was glimpsed at a fashion soiree at Paradise City, and she was wearing a gradient dress by Peter Pilotto, who was the chap that designed her wedding gown. And to the toes, she was wearing Valentino rock stud leather pumps in metallic silver. And I thought that it was a splendid look. I really did. I know we've seen this gown on her before, but it was wonderful to see it again. This was at a K-pop concert in Korea, where she was watching G-Dragon performing at the Chanel Culture Fund, Freeze Seoul 2024. Bravo, Eugenie, you'll be giving Beatrice a run for her money and stealing her crown as Tatler's most stylish. That's if I don't steal it first. See you next time, my dears. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed the show, my tip jar is in the description box. If you didn't, fuck you. And I'll see you next time. Ta-ra, my dears. Take care and toodle pip.